Good morning, and welcome to another edition of Techniche Tips. I am your host of Joseph M. Smith, and like always, I got another one for you. So excited to have you here with us on this Saturday morning. Now, it's a little bit different than normal. Normally, we do it at 11 a.m., but we decided to extend it because we have a special guest that's coming on today. And I wanted to make sure that I go to the audience first and foremost. I have Tech Coach Ralph in the building, so this is going to be very useful. Product management and ownership is very important. And thank you so much. Yes, like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification button if you have not already. And then we got Mitch in the building. What up, sir? Hey, good to see you, man. So glad that you are with us and rocking with us. And I also have a friend of the show, Ty Smith, who's also in the building. Two dope podcasters collide. And so we are here together. So I don't want to delay things any longer. I know that you guys were excited to get a part of this. We got Iana in the building as well. Good morning from Vegas. Glad you're both back safe at home. We could talk about Diversitech as well if you want to jump in and chime in on the show. So it was a lot of good things that were happening for sure. So we're going to talk about that and more. But before I go any further, without any delays, I want to bring up our guest that we're going to have today. I have none other than Mr. Juwon. Juwon, welcome to the show. How are you doing, brother? Is all well with you?
Yeah, everything is great. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm glad to have you as well. Well, just to kind of go through the show for those who don't know, I know it's a new time for today. As I said, it was a special events that led to this. So we're so excited to have it right now. But basically, the way the show flows is we're gonna basically talk with you for about 20 minutes or so. And this is for the audience members that don't know. We're gonna talk with Juwon for about 20 or so minutes, and then latter part of the conversation will be Q&A with you, the audience, that you could chime in. But just so you know, if you are on LinkedIn, you're gonna probably miss that Q&A. You got to come over to the side, and that side, which side I'm referring to, is the YouTube side. So look at the ticker below. Go ahead and subscribe to youtube.com/at Techniche Tips. That's youtube.com forward slash at Techniche Tips in order to be part of the Q&A portion of the conversation that we're going to have later today. Before we get started, Ty Smith says, "What's up, y'all? I'm not home yet. LOL here in MA. No problem. No problem at all." And so let's get started, my friend. So glad that we're again able to have this conversation. Now, for most people, they're like, okay, you weren't born into product management. In fact, let's kind of go back a little bit and let's just start from what you're doing right now. Can you kind of give a synopsis of all that you do right now, and then we'll backtrack into your story?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here today. I love your show and everything that you're doing. So I'm Juwon. As you mentioned earlier, I'm a product solution design manager, senior product solution design manager, which is more closer to being a solution architect than it actually is product management. But product management is what I've done and what kind of like led me to this role. I think in my last role, one of the things that I saw that was going to be like major just in the future was data and the cloud. And so those were things that I was looking for in my next opportunity. And of course, I could say that I had this all figured out, but I didn't. It just kind of like became the right opportunity at the right time, working within the cloud and data solution in a cloud and data solutions team, which kind of like is the intersection of why I'm excited. And just to kind of like give a backstory of why I'm excited about that. If you almost can't hear any tech pitch or any major tech company doing anything right now without talking about AI. And if you really break it down to the bare bones of it, it's data that powers AI. The better your data is, the better your AI is. And ultimately, where does all that data get stored? It gets stored in the cloud. So ultimately, like that's why those were two things that I'm passionate about, as I go forward in my career. But for the little bit of a background story, I studied history in college, so completely nothing to do with tech at all. But my origin story kind of like got started because I used to organize events and things like that in college. And there was one time I needed someone to make a poster for me. And, this guy in college had this little website design business and things like that. So got together with him and he helped me build that and we kind of like stayed in touch. And straight as he got out of college, and this was way back in Nigeria, he went with a bunch of friends and founded this company that's basically like, West Africa's Indeed right now. And they did that straight out of college. So I got super
Wow.
inspired about that. They raised a couple $1 million to do that. And this was like college students. It's so funny too, because the reason why they decided to build a job website was when they were looking for internships in college, it was such a frustrating process because there were no jobs online. And as kids growing up in this like digital era, right, they felt that that wasn't right. So they basically started taking newspaper clippings and putting them on a website, and this thing became this huge opportunity. So I got super excited about that, like, because I could see a lot of myself in that. It's like, I'm also an entrepreneur, like, what can I do? So one of them kind of like backed me in my venture, built my first e-commerce business, sold that 2 years later. I got excited, did another venture. That didn't work out as well. But I learned a lot of lessons in that journey. And the most natural transition for me, at the time, as I kind of like looked at my career prospects, was product management. And maybe that's kind of like a bigger or better answer to your question, is like, how do you become a product manager, right? So ultimately, I think one of the things that I realized that's different, because I used to even get confused about what's the difference between a project manager, a program manager, and a product manager. So if you think about like at the basic level, I think most of us are project managers in a sense. So if you think about even the process of us setting up this call, right? So you're reaching out to me, we're completing a bunch of tasks, I'm filling out a form, we're setting up time. Those are like little tasks that we're managing together within the project of like getting this show together,
Hmm.
right? Um, so if you go one level above, then you have a program manager. So that could be like running the whole entire operation of like this channel. How are we communicating? How are we posting? How are we getting people scheduled in those multiple different projects of like staging every single show? But a product manager, kind of like still going with that level, is almost like seeing a vision. A broader vision is like, why did we want to start Techniche Tips? What is our growth plan for this channel? What is it going to look like in 5 years' time? And what is our ultimate goal that we're trying to accomplish? And how do we break that down into those little steps? So, for example, it's like within the first year, we want to get 30 guests on and run this show back to back. This is our marketing plan for how we get it to, let's say, 1,000 subscribers. This is so it's almost like that big overall vision where it's not, your deliverable as a product manager. You don't say, oh, I did 5 things and I got it all done, so I did my job. There's nothing like that, right? It's more, people pay you for the results that you get, right? So if you think about what a product is, the iPhone, the iPad, things like that, they're all people that will never rate it on, oh, it was a nice product. They also want product commercial success. So as an entrepreneur, I just felt like a natural progression.
You know what's so funny? You did a synopsis of the show in that one time. So, for example, like it's funny. One of the Q&A questions that we're going to ask for later, and you might have to save your questions, y'all. Is what is the difference between product manager and product owner? And you kind of touched on a little bit of everything. And so it's so funny because I'm looking at the comment section, like almost for the Q&A. So you know what? Might be a different show today. We might mix it up because I think we might just go right into the Q&A, and this will be talking a mixture of your journey, but also I'm going to just be putting questions in for people in the chat. Let's just do something different today
Yeah.
and do that. So you mentioned being an event manager, but between being an event manager and also doing product, you were a business development lead. Can you talk about the skills that you learned during that portion of your life and then what it transpired from there?
I would say, like, if I put everything in my career together, one theme that I could say that has kind of like being very evident is being an entrepreneur. Like, I like the idea of creating something out of nothing. And maybe something that lends itself to that was also the fact that I was an artist for, when I was in college, I was doing some rap. So I think that creative process of like, you don't even have a song title, right? So you got to come up with that. You don't know like how you're gonna do it, like what are you gonna talk about? So you have to come up with that. So I think there's a joy in that creation of like, there's absolutely nothing. There's no beat, there's no kicks, there's no snare, there's nothing like that. And you have to make that, build brick by brick basically to create this artwork, right? So I think I just enjoy that process. So for example, when I got out of college, in between founding my first startup, I was looking for a job. Um, my friends who had founded this company, so they had built some cloud with a lot of like companies who were really excited about this young guys doing this really phenomenal tech stuff. I'm like, oh, we're looking for someone to help drive our business development, but we also want them to have some kind of like technology background and to kind of like bring vigor to this thing. So one of my friends at the company then hit me up. It's like, hey, we got this role. If you're interested, we could get you an interview with the CEO today. I was super young, and this was a CEO of like a super successful company. I go in there. I think she could tell that I didn't really know so much about the business or whatever, but I think something that came true was my passion. I actually could tell that this young guy was really passionate, and whatever he set his mind to, he could figure it out. I actually learned a lot in this role, and I'll give you one example. So, for anyway, I started this role. One of the things that I brought initially was just this social media, Twitter specifically. Had kind of like had, and again, just for some context, a lot of my initial career started in Nigeria. So, social media, Twitter especially, had kind of like blown up. We were hung up on like trending, being number one, dragging people, doing all that, fun stuff.
Yeah.
And so when I went in this role, the goal was for me, how do I help this brick and mortar business kind of like transition online? And the goal initially was like start to build this online presence for them on social media. And there was no playbook. You don't have this kind of like HubSpot and all these different articles on how to build a brand page or even examples to see. So I had to figure all of that on my own. Made a lot of mistakes, right? Things that maybe aren't brand worthy. I did it regardless because again, there was no blueprint, right? But ultimately, I learned a lot through that process. I even built like, because for this business, it was a child clothing business, and I kind of like built customer psyche. I realized we had two different customer sets. We had the kids who wore the clothes, but we had the moms who kind of like made the purchasing decision, right? So I built this internal community of moms to get them excited about the brand, to become like ambassadors of the brand. Again, none of these ideas, it was no blueprint. I just figured, if moms are the people buying, then, we want to kind of like get them
Get
together.
its
And this was
moms.
also successful. Yeah. Right. So, and then I helped them build and launch their first ever website. Um, Again, e-commerce was completely brand new at this time as well. But again, learning a lot from my peers who were building, tech companies and things like that. I figured this was going to be something that we could do and got it off the ground successfully. In terms of the lessons that I said I learned, the CEO of that company wanted me to do market research because that's what you do
Mm.
when you're in business development. You like go into the market. But because I was young and stubborn, I didn't do it. I just found a way because I'm like, I already know everything. And that's where like ultimately it's
Mm.
so funny. Like when you start your career, you can have a little bit of like chip on your shoulder and be like, you know what, this tech thing is all it's about. But ultimately, again, this was something I reflected multiple times. It's that first of all, the things where you think you know the most is sometimes where you actually go need to learn more because there's almost so many
Mm.
layers that you can uncover by just being humble enough to. But ultimately, I realized that what I was actually doing wasn't pride, it was actually fear. She was pushing me to go where I wasn't comfortable, but instead of leaning into it, I kind of like ran away from it and gave myself the excuse that this wasn't something I really needed to do.
I love that. I love that. And the reason why is because I know that feeling. I've been there as well. Sometimes, and before I even do that, Operation Take Over says, sorry, I'm late grinding at the gig, but drop it into support. Thank you so much, brother, for stopping by. The show is never the same without you. But I wanted to just say, first and foremost, like I understand that. Like I've been there. I think we all have, if we admit it, where we've been to a place where we think we understand, we have a base level, but then we get into another environment that kind of shows us, hey, there's levels to this. And so it's a humbling experience, but it's a part of the growth journey as well. And speaking of growing, you decided to be a part of multiple businesses and start your own, right? Where did that entrepreneurial spirit come from before we continue?
So, as I was alluding to earlier, like I think it was from making music, right? I think just that idea of creating creating, building. And it's funny because like anybody who's builds anything, right? Even you can probably testify to it. Like it's never easy. People see like the glory, right? They'll see like your highlight reels. And for example, like as someone who's built and maybe stopped many things, it's funny, like people will come to you after and say, "Oh, why did you stop that thing? You were doing really well." And it's like, but you didn't say that like when I was doing it. Like, what's going
No support
on?
while grinding.
You didn't support me then. So like if I had more people saying that, maybe I wouldn't have quit, right? But ultimately, like it's never easy. But I think that, there's still like if you're a builder, you just derive joy from doing it. The pains
Yeah.
and the wins and the gains, they all kind of like work together, right? And I think that that's what I really like. Plus, there was also this potential. So from a Nigerian context, so many things don't work. Like you don't expect to just have power, right? It's not something that just exists, or
Yeah.
basically a lot of people self-govern in the sense that they provide their own water, they provide their own power, they provide sometimes even their own security, right?
Hmm.
So it's like when you grow up in a dysfunctional system like that, you just learn to see opportunity everywhere. Like like
Mm.
nobody's going to save you, right? So you have to
Yeah.
figure it out regardless one way or another. So I think that also played a part in it. And also like I think the biggest thing, in fact, one of the reasons why I make tech content was also like my origin story. If I'd never seen, basically, like I was paying this guy to work for me, quote and unquote, right? Again, it
Yeah.
wasn't working like a staff, but it was a business owner that I was patronizing and I gave business to. And for him to leave college and go build like this multi-billion-dollar business, they Tiger Global, the big VC firm, they were one of the first ever investments in the whole of Africa for this
Wow.
guy new in college. So that basically like blew my mind. It's like there's so much possibility out there. So that also inspired me to basically take that path and take that journey. So again, it wasn't easy, but it was just that seeing those different factors and figuring out how can I add value in this ecosystem.
Yeah. And your inspiration led you to a fan company or manga. I don't know which one it is now. They change it ever so often, the acronyms. But what was your experience being at one of the largest companies in the world doing product?
So that's a really great question that you ask. So if you think about most of my entrepreneurial journey, I founded like a deals based website, which if you think about it, that's like Groupon, but we use a single price point. So let's say like the $5 store or the $1 store would probably be the closest that most people will resonate with. Um, and after that, I went to build like this fashion e-commerce business. And even though like, of course I did like some short courses here and there, I didn't have any formal training. And that position, that grind, that those things that I figured out on my own was enough to get me that opportunity within the e-commerce division of a fan company, right? And that's the thing. Like even when I talk to a lot of people who want to break into tech, I always say one thing is that once you learn the skills, it's so important that you apply one way or the other. There's no substitute. If you speak to any recruiter, they'll tell you certifications are great, but the things that get prioritized the most are job titles, experience, the bullet points, and education. If you don't have the degree, but you have, um, if you don't have the degree, but you have software engineering in four places, you're likely going to get that interview before someone else who maybe has a degree but doesn't have that experience. So you have to apply it. So, for example, in my case, it was like doing it the most hardcore way and going to start a company. But even if you get together with friends and build, let's say, like a website or rebuild the website of your like a community library or whatever the case may be, that's something that you can go ahead to put on your resume, right? And it like oftentimes like I think that the way I think about it many times is almost um, if if they don't give it to you, then you gotta have to go build it yourself, right?
Mm.
Because interestingly, my job at Fang was my first ever job at that time. And almost or more than 10 years in my career that I ever applied to. Of course, I'd
Mm.
applied to many roles that I didn't get, but that was the first role that I applied to. So every other role before
Wow.
then, somebody has either referred me in, like, oh, this guy's great at this. So if you think about it, my job being an event manager made my friends who were building this tech company say, this guy's a hustler. He knows how to put things together. He'll be good as a business development manager.
Yeah.
And the job I did there made them think, oh, I can back this guy as an investor to go build this e-commerce company. When I sold that company, that success spoke for itself. Then I got in an incubator, which was one of the first ever in Nigeria. And they funded me too to build this next e-commerce business. My first official role in the US was working at a nonprofit. It was basically the same guy who helped me build my first company who referred me to this company. So my first ever role where I applied and knew nobody and just went through the system. And that was another thing, was that job searches were always so frustrating to me.
Mm.
It felt like I was begging, and I knew like the value that I brought. So I'm like, you know what? If you're not gonna pay, if I have to go through the stress, I might as well just go build it, right? And go do it myself,
Yeah.
right? So ultimately, I think it's that work that I've done. Basically, everything I've gotten in my career, it's the work that I've done before that that's made that opportunity for me.
Wow. It builds on top of itself. And so that I think this whole conversation has to be around being an architect of your career, of your life, and building things that are going to be foundational for your future, right? Oh man. I'm looking at the comment section. Tech Coach Rouse says, and I also suggest whatever you build, put it out there in the public domain. Nobody cares what's in your GitHub. So put it out there for people to see.
You
Uh,
can't say any better.
yeah.
In fact, something that I became more conscious of. So it's so interesting how we got to know was True Ty,
Yeah.
and Ty is phenomenal, right? And
Mhm.
and the reason I say that is because I read a sales book that really put this in perspective for me. There's almost like a paradigm, right? What you know and who you know. That's how most people think about it. The
Yeah.
good thing is many people do that first part. So whether that's gaining the knowledge, building something, but they don't do the second part, right? It's putting yourself out there, and that's so important. Like
Mm.
when you know someone, again, as I've told you, every opportunity has come from a relationship. But I read a book that put a different spin on it. I think it's called The Little Red Book of Selling,
Mm.
and it says, "Who knows you?" So that's the third dimension, because that's that piece that's so important. I've hired somebody to design something for me. Why? Because when they make a new design, they will put it out there. So every single time they put something out there, I'm like, wow, that's a great design. If I ever have something that I need to design, this person will do it for me. So every single time they did that, they continually sold themselves, even though they weren't saying, come and work with me. They were just saying, oh, look at this cool thing I built. And then we're interacting, we're engaging. Content, in fact, there was a time I was trying to build a community around something, and that was when I realized people coalesce around ideas. So no matter how interesting, outlandish your ideas are, if nobody hears them, if nobody sees them, if you don't put it in a form that can be consumed by other people,
Yeah.
do you really have ideas? And can people coalesce around what they don't know? Imagine how many people are fans of Kendrick or Drake right now, right?
Yeah.
Going whatever. But if either of them never put out music, you would never know who they are. And you can never coalesce around that idea. So, good or bad, whatever you surround yourself with is because somebody was bold enough to do that work. But um, just like they were saying just now, it's more about also putting it out there, because you have to kind of like let people see it and let people interact with it, and that's how you get that next level.
It's like it's so funny. I was just about to say it, and then Tech Coach Ralph says, like, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, the tree really fall. And so That is such so true words. I want to go to a question from Mitch because I thought this was a really good one. But in your opinion, can a business analyst, instead of justice, jump? Can a business analyst jump to product to be a product manager, or is a natural progression from product manager to product owner? Is that the natural progression?
Okay, so I'll answer the question in two parts. Um, I think even the word product owner and product manager, I've seen it used very interchangeably
Mm,
and even like in very confusing ways. So, but by the standard definition, product owner is like typically more in the Scrum light where you have a Scrum master and then you have a product owner. Whereas product manager is more like traditional, where it's like, this person owns a product. But even that can be like a very pregnant term, if we could use that word, because it encompasses almost so many things. I was just having this conversation at work with someone recently. It's that as a product manager, you could do multiple things. So you have technical product managers who oftentimes are doing tech specs, architecture, things like that, just defining like this tech architecture, and they do nothing else. You have business product managers who are making business justification or things for things like that. You have product managers at places like Instagram who obsess about, daily active users for the story feature, daily active users for this share feature. I don't know who's been on Instagram lately, but they just did this new thing for Reels where you can actually share the video from the actual video screen. That's a product manager messing around with your features again, right?
yeah.
So product managers can be responsible for so many things that it can be ridiculous at times. But what I'll say is, I would say like don't get hung up on the title too much, right? Just I think the more you start to look at roles, if product is where you want to be, definitely shoot for it. But look at the roles and look at the skills that you have. What roles are more tailored to that? Because even then, within those different domains, the reason why I was able to do product at Apple was because it was within an e-commerce team and they were going to leverage my e-commerce skills. So I went in knowing like
Mm,
many of the functional languages like product detail pages, search functionality, um, uh, s- uh, the reach content, right? So reach content would typically be like if you've been on an Amazon page, they probably have a video in there that shows like how the product is working. So they understood that on a basic level. I understood the elements that made a product, sell. Because if you think about what e-commerce really is, and it's funny, like it even took me going to the fan community to really realize this, right? Because
yeah.
if you go to buy a shirt in the store, you can feel it, you can touch it, you can do all of those things to it. Online, you don't have that opportunity. Also, you have more
Hmm.
urgency because if you've walked all the way to the store, you almost don't want to live there without taking something. Leaving, abandoning the cart is not that emotionally attaching. So you
Yeah.
have to make a product really appealing online for you to be able to get that buying, and everything matters, right? From your descriptions, like you have to use language that's enticing, you have to have captivating images, you have to have like sleek. So it's so many elements like that, and having that background in e-commerce where I understood, because think about it, if you've never done e-commerce before and you're a product manager and they're trying to explain like this is why you need images, you almost don't understand it. Because I could tell you, if even a crappy product photographed nicely will sell through. Maybe it might get a lot of returns, but it'll sell through, right? So it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So understanding that dynamic is very important, and that's what helped me. So I think finding ways, for example, if you're a BA in the healthcare sector, finding like product owner or manager roles there is actually more important than actually choosing between product owner or product manager.
Mm. And we have some people in the healthcare space on this live right now, so that's a gem right there. As is a gem. And I'm going to go out to our friend Ty. Many influencers have mentioned the challenge of having a job and online presence. How do you balance it?
I wish
I
I
feel
had
like
the
that's a
answer
question for
for
me.
that.
I'm about to
I
say,
wish
like,
it. No, but you go ahead. I think you should answer it.
me? Oh man,
Yeah.
I don't believe in balance anymore. I just believe prioritizing in the moment. Because it's never gonna be, if you think about it, we work what 8 to 10 hours a day, from a Monday through Friday. But I can make times with my wife meaningful at night by having a great conversation of 21 questions or whatever questions. Like, just like, hey, how was your day? I thought this was funny, if answer whatever. And in that 1 to 2 hours, you could have such a meaningful conversation. So for me, it's about prioritizing, with what I need to do at this particular time, which means that there are other things that other people might think, hey, you should be doing that, but that's not a priority to me right now. My priority is X, Y, and Z because this is important. I need to spend time on the show. I need to spend time with the kids. I need to spend time at work and doing work stuff. So I prioritize within the moment. But that's the way I've done it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts.
That's a beautiful way to say it. I actually made a tweet and somebody knocked me for it. I said work-life balance is a myth, right? I'm
Yeah.
like, because sometimes, and people think it's going to be a 50-50. It's not. Sometimes it's a 80-20, sometimes it's reverse, right? And it basically goes back to what you're saying, prioritization. So understanding what's more important in the beginning. And, the person's like, oh, it's sad that, you have to do 80-20 work. And I'm like, it depends, right? Because if you think about it, there are a lot of people who are in positions where they're making $500,000 in the same
Mm,
tech space. They did that because it's not necessarily because they're doing more work, but they've proven to be more valuable over time to find themselves in positions like that. So if they
mm,
front loaded that hard work to be in that position to where now, and if you think about it, oftentimes the life becomes easier even as their earning power becomes more important. I was in a meetup this week with a lot of like, I was like maybe the most junior person there. There's a lot of directors, VPs, they're part of this product group. And it blew my mind. Like people who were so successful like that are still prioritizing learning and things like that. I'm like, wow, I have a long
mm.
way to go. So it's so mind blowing that, again, ultimately it's like making time because people still go on vacation and completely do away with work. So in that time is actually 100 right? You're prioritizing yourself, your family, whatever else you got going on, your mental health. But you're doing it within the bounds of what's realistic. And
Yeah.
sometimes like you're 100% deep in just content, right? And other times you have zero, percent time for it. So it's just understand what's important per time. And I think we do that well as humans anyway, right? So I completely agree with your thoughts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In the comment section, they're going and they're talking about various things. In fact, Tech Coach Ralph has something good I want to go to later on, but I'm going to go to the conversation that's kind of unraveling around this, where he says, "Here's my mindset: no work life or over life balance, only work balance." And then he kind of elaborates and says, "I balance it by turning my work job concepts or things I need to learn for work into content. I turn my work into my hobby." And I've actually seen it because he does have a show, Tech Coach Ralph, where he actually is going through code live and all this different stuff. So he's practicing what he preaches. Which I think is a brilliant idea if you think about it, because then your life becomes content. And as we know, being in this space, which we didn't really dive into much, but you did allude to it, that you are a content creator. You have a show as well, that this content can monetize, right, eventually,
Mm,
and
mm.
become something that's not only beneficial to others, but something that could be beneficial to ourselves. And so let me just make sure that there was no comments mentioned before I go to this topic, but I thought it was very interesting because Tech Coach Ralph said, I was coaching someone who was offered 120K for PM. And I mean, I think that's product. I think he's talking about product management,
Yeah.
and it negotiated to 137. And so they wanted to switch from PM to QA. Then they saw the offers before the two and went right back to PM. So, not necessarily talking about yourself, but in regards to the income potential for somebody within this field, so people kind of have an understanding, what can somebody make overall, and what's like the, I guess, a range of from income and other benefits.
I feel like the again, and I might be biased, but the two highest paying roles I've seen in tech are usually product and
Mhm.
software engineers. Of course, software engineers are basically like the doctors of tech. They blow it out of the water. But with product too, I've seen job postings as high as $900,000.
Mm. Say that one
I
more time.
$900,000. Yeah,
Wow.
I'm still in shock as many who might hear that number are. And I know someone who works at one of the fan companies who makes over $700,000. So it's not something that, and this person is not even a director or anything like that, just
Wow.
a staff product manager. Um, um, but of course, again, caveat that by saying that's the exception, right?
Yes.
But across FANG, across the Apples, Googles, Amazons, if you start to get anywhere from you know mid to more senior, you can expect to earn anywhere between uh 250,000 to, like, I'd say maybe 600,000.
That's
And it's usually like the TC, right? So base that I've seen across most companies are usually in that range. So, and this is like, again, just kind of like break it down even further. So by the time you're more like 4 to 10 years in your career, you potentially have an MBA, you maybe had FANG in your belt, because all of these things kind of like go into your negotiation power, right? You could be doing base of anywhere from like 140,000 to like 250,000, and then now get things like sign-ons, and um, you get sign-ons, you get RSUs, you get things like that. And different companies have the way to do it. So I didn't even have like insight into it until like this last interview round that led me to my latest role. So for example, one of my friends, so I was interviewing at Amazon, and one of my friends was like, oh, you have to, like, when Amazon asks you like, what do you want for sign on, you have to kind of like come in with a good number. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm going to ask for like 50K. And it was good that we had that conversation. Like, 50K, are you crazy? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you have to ask for like 350K. I'm like, wait, it's
for
a
a
sign-on
sign-on
bonus?
bonus.
He's like, so he breaks it down. So they have like a very weird structure, right? Where they have a cap in
Hmm.
terms of what they pay for. And I didn't know this. That's why oftentimes you need to build a network, because if I didn't know it, I would have just gone, if I got that role, I would have shot myself completely in the foot. So they usually cap their base between 150 to 165, regardless of how senior you are, unless like you're going for like the director level roles and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, so where they do it, they then give you the RSUs. But even the RSUs are like staggered, where I think you maybe only vest 5% in the first year, you
Okay.
vest maybe another 15% in the second year, and then you vest 70%, 80% over the last 2 years. So that doesn't sound fair, right? So how you compensate for that is through the sign-on bonus, because you don't get paid once. You get paid over those first 2 years. So the cash goes away after the first 2 years, because that's when the RSU now comes in heavy, right? So
Mm.
if you were targeting, let's say, 20K a month, right? Your base will still be very small. You will get very limited stock. So you're basically getting, sometimes you're getting, let's say you're getting 10,000 per month on your paycheck, or let's say 11,000, you could be doing 13K in that sign-on bonus. Because when you have a heavy sign-on bonus like that, they won't ever pay you once. Because imagine if they paid you 250,000 the first month,
Lump
you're gonna
sum. You
quit
like
after
quit.
6 months. Quit and go get
You'd
a
be
better
like,
job, right?
deuces.
I'm out. So they'll give you,
Yeah.
but a company like Netflix, for example, they'll give you that thing cash, bro. Even the
Mm.
RSUs are in cash. So if you negotiate, like, say, $500,000, you get that every single month. You can do cash, or you can
Wow.
take everything. They don't lock anything. And when you're even doing RSUs there, like if you're doing like RSUs, it converts straight to cash. You don't even have to sell it. There's no incubation period. There's no, it's all cash. So again, like, those are some of the nuances that I understand by going through many of these processes.
That is and one thing that you said that I really wanted to harp on for a second, because I saw it in the chat too. Chat was buzzing. Like Mitch said it himself, the most I've heard he said was 100K, 350K. That's something else. But when you break it down like that, if you do not have that knowledge, man, you're gonna be regretting it severely, because you're looking like, why is this so low? Wait a second, I thought I was working for but because of the math and how things work and add up, yeah, this is great information, y'all. If y'all build your network, especially at different places, and inquire, man, this is so good. I'm trying to go back through all the comments. It's a lot here. Oh, we got the bro in the building. You got Tech Back Trey. What up, brother? We have a morning show every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Central. So thank you so much for stopping by, my man. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Man, I'm trying to go through all the comments because there's a lot that came through. Yeah. Oh yeah. So he was saying that my company gives you 20% per year of RSU vesting for his company. All right. Well, that actually, we're going to be wrapping up very soon here, but that makes me want to ask you another question before we wrap up. What should people be looking? Actually, let's transition it from tech to talk about what you do, what we both do actually in content creation. You mentioned that you wanted to get into content creation because you of your experiences, one of the first businesses that you're a part of, and so in regards to your mission right now, it's basically to expose people to the industry, to expose people to different professionals within the industry, different opportunities. Where do you see the future of content creation and the tech space going? Is it something that we need more content creators talking about it, or we have enough? Like, where do you see this growing? Because I see that there's great potential here, and I would love to hear your opinion.
So that's a good question, and you can get me to talk about this forever. So my mission again I started it because again my first role in the U.S. was as director of program management for this nonprofit called Reskill Americans, where we basically help train a lot of underrepresented folks in tech skills like product design, software development, product management, things like that. And it blew my mind to just how much opportunity was there in helping people within our community land roles. I had a full circle moment last year at Afrotech where I was waiting to talk to another creator, Dr. Taj or Dr. NYC on different socials. And somebody tapped me from the back and says, hi, this guy, his name is Jalen Harris. He was one of the people who came to our program sponsored to Afrotech by his company, McDonald's Global Tech, to come to this conference. He was working as a teller before he came to our program, making $35,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
First, when he got hired at McDonald's, they started paying him $105,000. That's times 3x of what he was making before because of this opportunity.
Wow.
And when I look at like a lot of the challenges that we have in the community, one of the things that people talk about a lot is poverty. And income is one of the biggest. Of course, you have to learn how to save, you have to do this and that, but income is one of the very biggest things. And I've seen it in my life, in the life of so many people around me, right? Because oftentimes we often underestimate the access that we have, right? Whether it's like other people we've seen around us. Again, I talk about a lot, the people who helped me. The biggest barrier that I faced even thinking about tech was I needed to go learn how to code. And people
Mm-hmm.
like my friends were able to help me break that mindset. It's like coding is just one limited part of tech. In fact, as someone who works around a lot of developers now and like data people and things like that, being able to think is one of the biggest skills in tech. It's not even doing the thing.
Wow.
And oftentimes people overcomplicate. So being that voice to say, just hold on, like, are we overlaying too much, like um, piling just too much unnecessary stuff into this decision process? Can we separate it off? What are we really trying to do? Right. And then start to kind of like look at it layer by layer. You can learn all the technical stuff. You can learn like, the E1, E2, E3s, all of these technical terms, but it's harder. The soft skills are the hard skills, right?
The soft
Because
skills are the hard skills. I like that.
so ultimately, it's like being able to do that, and somebody helping me to see that was super important. Because oftentimes, just as humans, that's the way we are, right? Let's say you wanted a G class, a G wagon, right? If you got it, then you want a Cullinan, Like that's just the way we work. We start to discount what we have and overprice what we don't have. So
Mm,
someone helping me to see that vision and my own ability to say, you're already great at doing things. You're building things from the ground. Do you know how many people can't even go and talk to a stranger? But
mm,
you have all this different skills, and you think you until you go learn this other thing, you can't. And if you think about it, many of those skills don't even overlap because to be a software engineer, you must be willing to sit down in front of a computer and just be comfortable there. I'm not. I prefer talking to people. So it's like figure out what you're really good at and then figure out a way to monetize that. And that was the biggest thing. So why am I doing content? The biggest thing for me is how do I carry this gospel? Because I was having this same conversation with someone yesterday. Is that the reason why it's so easy for a lot of black folks to be rappers, NBA players, NFL players, is that we have TV. So you don't need to be motivated elsewhere. There's a lot of motivation right in front of you.
yeah.
But who are the tech rock stars, right? Maybe we might talk about Cyrus. Maybe there's Simone Bees, right? But there's
Hmm.
not a lot of people. And even within these things, you have to be connected to those spaces. Like these people are not on national television telling their stories. So to answer that other question, I don't think there's enough. I think the only place I'm just careful of is where misinformation starts to come in or people start to
Mm,
take advantage because that also sets us back. Imagine a creator comes flashy and say, oh, you're going to learn cybersecurity in 45 days and start making six figures, right? And you
yeah.
buy into that and you pay somebody $3,500. And now you don't get that job. How many more people get poisoned? Because it's so funny. There's a chain effect.
Yeah.
When Jennings gets that job at McDonald's Global Tech, maybe five other people close to him now start seeing tech as something they could do. For that person who
Hmm.
pays 3,500 and doesn't get it and gets laughed at by his friends, five more people also get demotivated to not even want to give this a chance. So we
Yes.
can never have enough, but every single one who's doing negative work in the community is definitely harming our chances of kind of like having this really beautiful thing where more people are participating.
Bro, drop dropping the bars there. Dropping the bars. I was gonna say something, but I gotta stop because the queen is speaking. Ayana says coding is the only one part of the tech industry. Once I figured that out, it made a huge difference in my confidence to go after certain roles and own that. I too am in tech. And that is so true because we are both on the selling side. We're in tech sales. And she said, well said, Jawan. Well said. No, it's
Thank you,
so
Ayana.
yeah, it's so true because sometimes we think like, oh, we have to, or it's marketed like you have to code, you have to do X, Y, and Z, but tech runs with a bunch of different cogs in the wheel, right? And so you definitely having that understanding. But man, you first of all, you said a lot of this. I'm trying to remember everything you said. I can't. I have to go back and listen to the recording. But what I will say is that it's so true to have people, the tech coach Ralph's, the like you mentioned, Cyrus. We actually were hitting it up at Diversity Tech this week as well. A lot of people were there. The Ty Smiths of the world, everybody that's here that's representing and really kind of displaying the full gamut of what tech is in a very ethical way, not a predatory way, to the masses. We're the ones that are carrying that beacon and saying, "Hey, listen, there's opportunities in there for you. There's opportunities in here for you as well. Now you'll be able to see it for yourself." And so I'm so glad you said what you said. I honestly, we need to drop it here because that needs to simmer, as they say. People need to go back and watch that again. But thank you so much. And then Ty said Smith actually said that the comments are flowing in, so I'm trying to keep up. Tech Backtrace is realistic expectations for people equal positive work in the community. Yes, realistic. Very true. Tech rock stars should be normal, relatable people too. I agree, and that's why when it comes to tech boot camps, there's only one that I have that is a little over, four. So was it four figures? I'm trying to remember the decimals, but everything else is like $500, $600 when it comes to tech boot camp specifically, because I think that depending on what they're looking to provide value to, and most of the things that I do are non-technical jobs that I kind of recommend, whether it's course careers or level careers. Like, the knowledge is there you could get it yourself, but they're just aggregating that knowledge and they're providing a community that you can learn and do it alongside of. And it's not predatory in that way. That's why I love it because we spend some people spend $500 on dinner.
That's
you
true.
you eat that meal and you're done. I
And,
took the
and
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I wanted to quickly say something too. So
Yeah,
even like this thing I was telling you about. So
yeah.
like I said, I met so many senior people. These people, in my opinion, don't need to go do community or learn stuff, right? But
Mm,
they're still paying like almost $5,000. And it's funny,
mm,
like it's for a weekend course, right? So it's not even like they're not doing like some senior. Because if you think about it at that level, it's not generic advice you're looking for. You're looking
yeah,
for things that are really incisive.
yeah.
That's basically like raw to the point.
Mm.
So it's paying for knowledge itself is not bad, no
No,
matter even
yeah.
what the price is.
Hmm.
Because I would actually advise anyone if the decision was between a self-thought or or to go to a boot camp or to go to a learning setting, I would always recommend going to a place where you can learn in a community. First
Mm,
of all,
yeah,
it's everything that I am today was because I went to college, not because of what I learned in college, but because of being in the college.
yep,
The company I found coming out of college, the job I got came from the people, the activities I did there. I
yeah,
wouldn't have that community of like minded people who are building things, designing things, inspiring me if I
mm,
wasn't in that situation. And
yes,
just like they say, iron sharpens iron, right? So if you're not in that space with other people, that's what you're paying for oftentimes, is being in the same space with other people who are also in a journey to better themselves. You can't get that on your own. So when you, and
mm,
we're competitive, we're social. So when you see someone who's like you, who maybe even sometimes you think, oh, this person always gives me props for being smart, and they get a job, you get fired up and be like, you know what?
mm,
I'm slacking. I got to go do it too. But when
yeah,
you learn on your own, where's that reference? You don't have it. So
mm,
again, not to knock it, but I'm saying it's always better that way. I think the challenge comes in where people set unrealistic expectations, right? And say, you're gonna get this, knowing fully
yeah,
well it's never that easy, right? Your
hmm,
journey in tech, I've seen people, Jailing, I was mentioning earlier, got a job in 4 months. So the program was seven
wow,
months long. He got a job before we ended it. There were people who went through the whole program who probably never got jobs because oftentimes, again, it's everybody's journey. Like, are you putting out, some people will get discouraged after sending 50 resumes. Some people don't mind to
mm,
send 5,000, right? So you can never gauge that. So you don't even know. You can't make promises. And you've seen it, like even with the American education systems, where all of those
yeah.
programs will come out and say, we'll guarantee jobs, but later it doesn't happen. So it's just being careful there more than anything
Mm.
else.
Brother, I got to bring you back for a panel. I feel like we're just getting started in this conversation. Nah, seriously, I'm dead serious. Like I got to bring you back because I feel like we're just getting started in the conversation, talking about some really, really important topics to the community and things we definitely need to dive in. Out of respect for our mutual friend Ty, I'm gonna have him have the last question. But
Okay.
this is gonna basically be last question. Any quick advice for other Nigerians that want to follow your path and enter the U.S. tech market? Because I've also had people that reached out to me about this.
To be honest, it's not easy. I'm
Mm,
gonna say that. Just because like there's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through with, immigration and stuff like that. But ultimately, I think the biggest hack to do it, the biggest way to do it is to offer value.
yeah,
Again, for example, like I've worked with, whether it's like building website, doing content, doing things like that. I've worked with a lot of Nigerians back home um, to do stuff, right? So I think that's probably like the easiest way, because if you think about it, like let's say you want to build a website and like there's a guy who builds dope websites and he reaches out to you and say, hey, here's my work, I'm willing to partner, and they have reasonable rates. So it's kind of like things like that.
yeah.
First thing is that kind of like build that network, because it's the same game. If you build a network, you're doing the work, you're putting it out there, people are doing it. Because if you build a website, what are the chances that you have two other friends who also want to build websites
Mm.
or do product or do whatever? So I think that's probably the easiest way. Of course, I've seen people who apply directly to companies, Amazon being one of them, and gotten the jobs, but it's never just always easy that way.
So good. It's never easy just that way. I mean, it goes back to community, who you know, and like you said earlier, Who knows you? Who knows you? Oh, so good, man. Y'all clap it up if you can in the chat for Juwon the Techie. He provided so much content. And if you have not checked the description of both YouTube and LinkedIn below, they do have the description to connect with Juwon, whether it's on any of his platforms that he's on. He has a list there. So definitely check, see which one you're on, connect with him there. And if you have any other information, absolutely reach out. Yeah, we got claps from Mitch as well. And so this so glad that you were able to stop by, man. I know we had to shift some things around, but I'm so glad we were able to make it work.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for everyone joining. Shout out Ty, shout out Trey, shout out everyone in the chat. Y'all made this so interesting.
Yeah, you made it interesting, my friend, as well. So thank you so much. And like I always say, family, until next time, we hope to see you, Juwon and I, on the other side. And the other side is basically literally anything that you're hoping to do in 2024 and beyond. Take care, family.